Galleon has finally arrived to Granblue Fantasy Versus Rising, and she brought along some rather unexpected changes to the game. Along with the new character, the newest patch for GBVSR gives other characters some fairly sizable changes. Some characters have been gifted buffs to help them compete, while others receive some nerfs to tone them down a touch. In this video, I'm going to summarize what I believe are the key changes that came with this patch. Who's eating and who's starving? Time to find out. Before moving on to specific characters, there are a couple of changes to system mechanics that I want to touch on. The first one being that multi-hitting normals no longer add additional ticks to the combo limit after the second hit. What this basically means is that if you have a character that has a multi-hitting normal like Lucilius here with a close H, or Anilla with her close H, and they incorporate them into their combo routing, instead of having to route into a less damaging close medium to not have the combo drop, they can now go into the close heavy. To demonstrate this, I'm gonna use Lucilius and do a crude combo that's partially borrowed from CD Mangaka, who has a plethora of great breakdowns for each character and system mechanics that were affected in this patch. So definitely go check out their channel. I'll link it in the description below. So previously on a route like this, you would have to go into that close medium after the Raging Strike in order to preserve the combo and not have it drop, because close H with it being a multi-hit would cause the combo limit to activate, and then it would drop right when the super would hit. But now in this new version, he can do that close H and then go into that Axiom Super and get a little bit more damage on the touch. It is very nice in order to get a little bit extra damage on your combo routes. The second tweak to system mechanics is that fuzzy overheads have been effectively removed from the game, with a couple of exceptions. In a nutshell, being able to make your opponent block your jump in and then go into a rising jumping normal like a JL no longer works, because they are just going to have the button whiff on the crouching opponent. Zeta here is an example of a character that's affected by this, because she used to be able to do a jump in and then go into a rising JL in order to get a fuzzy overhead setup to catch the opponent crouching after blocking the JH or whatever jump in normal that you wanted to use. She can no longer do that, so she has to go back to one of the exceptions that I alluded to in the beginning of this segment, which is that she has to go into JU instead. The other character that was explicitly mentioned being able to use their fuzzy overhead is Fairy with her JL. They must have viewed those two use cases as essential to how these characters can structure their offense. So those are the universal changes to the system mechanics, and now I'm going to go through each individual character's changes, briefly summarize them. I'm going to do it in a more condensed fashion, so if you want to check out all of the changes and you want a more detailed idea of what changed from this version from the past version, definitely make sure to go review the patch notes yourselves, or check out the more detailed breakdowns such as the ones I mentioned done by CD Mangaka. So the first character that I want to talk about is Ladiva, everybody's favorite grappling gal. She got a pretty comprehensive list of changes that I think allow her to compete more effectively in neutral and on defense, as well as accentuate her ability as a grappler to snowball once she gets in from those prior two phases. So in terms of the neutral phase, Ladiva's Headbutt of Love, or her 236X, or her forward special here, had the ability to get rid of fireballs, which is very good in a game like Granblue, where a lot of characters have projectiles to keep characters like Ladiva at bay and stop them from approaching you. The changes in this version are that the non-ultimate versions of Headbutt of Love now give you more meter when you successfully get rid of a fireball. So right there, you got about 20% meter to your skybound gauge. And the consistency of the medium and heavy versions were also buffed, because they gave them more duration for their projectile invulnerability. So as you saw there, I was a little bit more generous with the timing, and I was still able to clear the fireball out. And against multi-hitting fireballs, such as Catalina's heavy right there, you wanted to use the heavy version of Headbutt of Love to get through all of them, but there were some times where it'd be a little bit finicky in doing so. Now what they've done is that they made it so the follow-up to the heavy Headbutt of Love is projectile invul from frame 1 of the follow-up's move. So it's very much more consistent in terms of clearing the multi-hitting fireballs, which is really, really good. In addition to Headbutt of Love, her neutral skip tool, which is this elegant lariat, her back special, or her 214X, is now traveling faster with greater distance, so it is a more effective burst option here to catch your opponent off guard while they're kind of walking back and forth in this ambiguous space. So you can just go, hey, I'm in here, get the guard crush going, and then boom, you're in there, and then you can set up your strike throw offense. This pertains to the light and medium versions. Now defensively, I need to start off by introducing what I believe is the biggest change to her toolkit, which is her dual resort screwdriver now being 5 frame startup instead of 7, and that is huge. So if you don't know, her JRS or her SPD, her command grab is this move right here, and yet you can see first active frame is 5. So this has a lot of implications defensively. So to demonstrate the defensive implications of this change, I'm going to use Vera's Far M into Scarlet Oath, which leaves her at -5 on block. And I believe I positioned myself so that I'm not immediately in throw range. Yeah, see right there, it whiffed, and that was the only way Ladiva could punish anything. That was -5 if they were in throw range, because other than that, she has a 6 framer. So if I just blocked after the fact, see that, you didn't get the punish notification, so I could have just blocked there. But now, I get a full punish with the command grab, which is very, very good defensively for an Abari option, and it allows her to challenge more stuff from the opponent effectively. So her having access to that really makes your opponent think twice about what they can structure their offense with. And if you have access to Nier, you can use the ultimate version because they buffed the throw range on that to match the light version. So if you have a -5 situation similar to what I just showed you, you can use the ult version in order to get a little bit more damage and really make them pay for doing some unsafe options that were previously safe to Ladiva exclusively. And finally, her ultimate Headbutt of Love received a bit of a reworking, so they made it so it functions more as a standard reversal rather than a gimmicky knowledge check. They made it start up faster, and it's now invul until the last active frame, so like I said, functions more like a standard reversal. And as you can see, it's now -4 on block, even though you get that guard crush notification, your turn is still pretty much over, but it's not like you're unsafe. You can be more free to exercise your right to reversal out using that move than you could prior if your opponent was more versed in the matchup. Now that we've talked about the changes that increase her chances to get up close and personal to the opponent, let's talk about what makes her even scarier now that she's in your face. Work the Crowd is the taunt here that Ladiva can access after she successfully lands her signature command grab, Dual Resort Screwdriver. And the effect of that is that it buffs the damage on the next command grab. So the first one did 2,700, and as you can see, this one did 3,200. So about 500 more damage. Well, not about, exactly 500 more damage. And prior to this patch, if you did another command grab after landing Work the Crowd, the effect of the taunt, which was that damage buff, would go away until you did Work the Crowd again. So you would have to keep recycling that. And what that does, unfortunately, is that when you just do a normal command grab and you don't go into the taunt, you get better frame advantage on your Oki. So you're +30 here, and if you do the taunt, you're only +5. So you're sacrificing a lot of frames to get your strike throw going. In this version of the game, she only needs to land Work the Crowd once in order for the damage buff to remain. So I landed here once, boom, that's 3,200. And then here, didn't do the taunt, and then that grab did 3,200. So the snowball ability still remains if you don't have to go into that Work the Crowd. So you can get that +30 while still having that damage buff active, which is really, really good for her strike throw game up close. In addition to her JRS getting buffed by Work the Crowd, her down special Devoted Body Slam or 623X also now gets their damage buffed by the taunt. So let's land a heavy command grab without Work the Crowd active. See what kind of damage that we get, 5,300. Now let's land a taunt. Do the same setup. Oh, 6,100 on that bad boy. That's crazy damage. So really good stuff right there. And in addition to that, the non-ultimate versions of Devoted Body Slam were buffed as well, so they do 500 more damage. So if you work them into a combo like this, you get more touch or more damage on that touch. And one more fun little thing is that her leg drop of adoration, or the aerial version of the 360 command grab, now is able to block or grab opponents that are in block stun in the air. So you can do stuff like this. The opponent's blocking, you hit them with an air-to-air, they blocked it, and then you just cancel into command grab, which is pretty great. So she's getting more reward for countering fireball neutral with the change to her headbutt of love. And additionally, with her lariat getting buffed, she's able to skip through that phase a little bit better. I don't know how much better it is going to be because you can still crouch it, but it's faster, so it's going to be a little bit more of a scary thing against the opponent who's just kind of walking back and forth in that standing position. And once she gets in, the buffs to her damage and the consistency of how Work the Crowd works is going to shorten the game for her, so she has to win less interactions with her grappler close quarters offense. And then finally, when she's holding down back against the opponent, trying to get something started on her pressure-wise, her having a 5-frame Abari option in that Jewel Resort screwdriver is very, very powerful in terms of her getting her turn back. The next character that I want to talk about is Vaseraga, and his signature skill, Soul Forge, got a pretty significant rework that needs to be discussed. Previously, how it worked is once you use 5U to activate the Soul Forge skill, which gives Vaseraga armor on his charge normals or a special that he wanted to use, that would be a one-time use, and then he would have to use 5U once again in order to reactivate it. But now what they've done is put it on a gauge here. So you saw that I used it on that charge normal, but Soul Forge is still active as the gauge was counting down. So I could have used that armor again because the gauge is active rather than it just being a one-time usage. Blue Sky Guy BSG, a premier Vaseraga player, showcases how great this is by being able to do a charged far H and then still being able to have armor to go into stomps and go through Brave Counter, keeping the offense going. So it's an interesting change to how his signature skill works. It does definitely increase his ability to bully the opponent with the armor and just absolutely impose his will. And adding on to his ability to bully the opponent are a couple of other changes that help him out in ways to do so, because he was apparently in a shortage of ways to do so. They buffed his far M so that it is more effective as a poke in neutral and in that mid range. To counteract this, they also made it so that the hurt box is extended prior to the move coming out and that it's not as active, so you can poke at it a little bit more and catch him on startup. That being said, it's still pretty scary to see this move being thrown out here. Far H is now -8 on block instead of -15, so significantly better frame advantage. However, I think Vaseraga players were usually just using a special cancel after the fact, like his Instinction Fireball here. And it is very scary to be hit by this because they buffed the hit stun on counter hit on the Far H, so pretty good stuff there in terms of being able to pick up on landing that poke in neutral against somebody who's trying to poke at you in a case like they're trying to get you for using that far M. So you just slightly outspace them and then boom, get that counter hit going, get a crush on them, and then convert it into Vaseraga gaming. Sweeping Slash, or his low hitting medium follow-up out of that Savage Rampage stance, is now -6 instead of -10. And of course, the Lariat skill Battalions of Fear received some changes, with the light and medium versions having faster startup, and the heavy version travels faster with more distance and has more pushback on block as well. So that -5 becomes a lot more ambiguous for your opponent to swing into after the fact. And then finally, one more cool little change is that his close heavy now has significantly more frame advantage, as it causes a crumple state on a counter hit on the charge version. You get +99, so that's a lot of room to get a full combo like this on a DP punish or a reversal. So really, all of these changes boil down to Vaseraga becoming way scarier in a variety of ways and in different situations. That mid-range game being buffed with the Far M, and the Lariats being a lot more effective in terms of commanding the space in that mid-range, or just being able to present yourself with a burst option. And then the Soul Forge being active for successive ways to use the armor is very, very good, and also gives him a chance to keep the offense going without having to go back into 5U, sacrificing potential frame advantage or potential damage on a combo, similar to how Ladiva had to sacrifice her Oki for getting that taunt going. Now that she had that change, Vaseraga has something different in 5U, so we'll be interested to see how Vaseraga players now route their strings or set up their Oki around this new version of Soul Forge. The next character we're going to look at is Vane, who received some changes to buff his defensive ability rather than the other two, who were definitely more so focused on being able to maintain offense. His toolkit suggested that he was supposed to be a lot more of a defensive character who was more of a wall for the opponent to try to traverse, but it felt like at times he was incomplete in that aspect, and there were a variety of ways characters could just sort of ignore what he was trying to represent with those options. And with this patch, it feels like the developers have kind of finally realized that, because they reworked some things so that they, I feel, work as they were intended to with the release of the character. So first thing is this one for all, or his down special, which is, you know, huge now. They made it so that it has increased duration on its non-ultimate versions, as well as having a lower window for where he can get counter hit out of it for using it. So now it's a bit harder for the opponent to use their dash skills or their fireball skills to sort of penetrate the shield, and Vane can actually use it what it's intended for, which is to stop the opponent from closing the distance on him quickly or trying to use skills to narrow that space. Another buff is that his energy destruction, or this back special, now has increased range on it. Look how far that hits now, so that is even better for his ability to wall out the opponent, and this pertains to the light version and the heavy version. So in addition to the shield being able to stop the opponent from quickly approaching him, he can lock the opponent down at further ranges more consistently by using this skill. And then his signature skill, Breakthrough, now has more duration on the armor, so it's active for longer, so he's able to absorb more hits until these downswing of this big ol' pole arm that he's wielding. And on successful hit, they buffed the damage on it as well, so you now get 1500. I think it was just 1000 before, so Vane players, let me know in the comments if I'm wrong on that. It's either 1000 or 1200, can't remember. Not only that, if you land a counter hit, you can go into a combo now, which is really, really nice in terms of being able to stop the opponent from doing anything crazy to you. So yeah, definitely doing a lot better in the defensive department, which is definitely in service of the intended archetype of the character. And then a couple of other neat little changes that he got were that his heavy arm destruction, or the heavy DP here, got better combo ability because they made it so that the opponent is closer to you now, so you can get better follow-ups, whereas before, you would have to do like 2M or something and then go into super, and the super wouldn't even cause cinematics, so your opponent wouldn't even lose a BP if you routed from that mid-screen, which was pretty tragic. So now, better mid-screen combo ability. And then one more cool thing is that after a counter hit on his JU here, he can cancel into a special skill such as energy destruction. So pretty cool stuff for air-to-air game. Again, accentuates his ability to sort of keep the opponent away from you even in the air. So pretty nice stuff there for Vane. Now let's talk about Nier, a character who got some pretty good buffs, and in the interest of saying something that I didn't think I'd be saying a year ago, she kind of needs these. I think she really needs these, actually. Look, I get if you have Season 1 PTSD, completely understand you don't want this character to get anything. But I think it's fair to say that the way that she and her puppet Death were nerfed in later patches were a little bit of overkill. And what I mean by that is that when Nier lost access to Death, which happened a lot, it took a long time for her to get it back. And without Death, she really doesn't really have access to anything other than, you know, just being able to go triple strike into 5U. So again, they really wanted to make sure that the character could play into its intended design. And they did that by buffing Nier's ability to keep Death ready and in tow. The first major change being that the passive recovery on her Love's Redemption gauge, which you see in the upper part of the screen here, actually recovers a bit faster, according to CD Mangaka's estimate. Again, check out his videos. According to his estimate, about 4 seconds faster than it did previously. So you saw it started off slower and then it continued to sort of get faster as time went on. So now Nier gets Death back faster if she runs out of stocks. Additionally, her using Love's Redemption or Pain, which are her 5U and her J5U, give her the same amount of gauge recovery on block that they do on hit. So even on block, when she has a safe pressure ender, she is able to recover Death back as if she hit the opponent, which is really, really good for her. And when she is in the install super World of Death and Love, the gauge builds back mighty fast now, so that's pretty good stuff. Also, a really weird thing was that death used to go away on throw break, and they reversed that so that death now stays out even if the opponent techs the throw. A couple of other changes that are pretty nice for her are that her far M got buffed, so it is now 9 frames startup, so pretty good poke to be using. Of course, you're gonna see a lot of this far H, but being able to cycle in that far M for a quicker poke is pretty nice too. It does have pretty good range. Additionally, the ultimate version of Misfortune, her forward special or her 623, got buffed, so the opponent is closer to her on a successful hit. So it gives her better Oki after getting that hard knockdown for being right defensively in terms of using that option. So pretty good stuff in terms of Nier being able to get her offense going rather than the opponent being at a distance to where she was not necessarily threatening, which is frankly in line with how most ultimate reversals work in this game, so completely agree with this change. And one more interesting thing is that the medium version of Misfortune has 10 frames less recovery, so it's now plus 10 on block. I think that means that it has more function in terms of setting up a pretty good combo ability, or also just maybe a cheeky way to reset pressure as Nier. So it'll be interesting to see how Nier players figure out how to implement that. The biggest thing, of course, is that she is not without friends, and death is going to be around more consistently for her so that she's more of a complete character, because her toolkit is designed around the puppet. She's a puppet character, so being able to have access to that more often than she previously did, which was honestly not as much as a Nier player would like, very, very good for her. And the final character that was net buffed is Beelzebub here. The biggest buffs really lie in 2 specials, which are Black Flies, his Fireball special, and Karma, which is the Vacuum. The former received changes similar to what Fairy and Matera got in the previous patch, which were that they have faster startups, so they can be used a lot more effectively in neutral because they can just be sent out at a faster rate. Additionally, the charge time is faster as well, so it really helps Bubsy's ability to play that Fireball game. The ultimate version has a pretty nice buff to where it will bring the opponent closer to Bubsy for a more consistent combo. I think there was a bit of a finicky situation where they would fall out of the combo in that situation where I would do far H into the 236U, so pretty good stuff there in terms of combo consistency for him. And then Karma received a change where they standardized how plus or minus the opponent is on block, rather than it being variable based on the range that you would activate the skill at. So for example, the light and heavy versions are +2, whereas the medium version is always +4. So depending, or no matter what range that the opponent is sitting at, you're always going to know you're +2 or +4 depending on the version that you use. And the light and medium versions have faster startup now. In the light version, it's pretty cool for combo game, because if you get a crouching hit, you can combo into it from a triple strike into a light Karma, and then continue your combo from there on a grounded opponent. I think I should also mention the changes to his high jumps, because they're kind of how he threatens his dive kick. So the neutral high jump had its jump height distance, or his jump height reduced, whereas the forward high jump has more travel distance. So I think this is just a different way for him to threaten his unisonic, so that it's a little bit scarier to play around that for the opponent, because if he's able to be from far away while he's throwing out these fireballs, which again, newly buffed, so you're like, oh, he's trying to play the fireball game with his good tools now, he can just be like, oh, by the way, forward high jump, unisonic, and we're good. In my opinion, one of the most interesting characters. Was very cool to see Kazun Kai play him at Combo Breaker, so definitely want to see more Bubs players around the Skydom, and I think these buffs will go a long way in terms of helping that happen. We are now in the nerfs part of the video, and I think these are 2 characters on screen that you are probably very thankful to see that are included on this section, depending on who you ask or if you play one of these 2 characters. Yes, we're going to talk about Beatrix and Versusia, because these were 2 characters that did receive some knockdowns from the developers, and we'll start with Beatrix. So for starters, she received a change to her heavy fireball. It now launches the opponent on hit. If you remember, it kept the opponent grounded, so she was able to confirm this on mid-screen into a far light and then go into riding free. Can't do that anymore. And in the corner, she has to go for different routing now. She can't just do triple strike to keep the opponent grounded, because now it activates combo limit. So that reduces the overall damage for her in the corner as well. So, you know, reductions to her corner carry and her damage from her standard touches, and then her down skill or her 2-2x riding free receives some changes in a variety of ways, honestly. Her light version, if you got counter hit, you could be able to pick it up, and now it's only +2 on counter hit, so you don't get any combo after the fact. You just kind of get the, hey, you hit him, but you're still plus, so you can continue your turn. And then the heavy version of the skill was changed so that all hits after the first hit are no longer low, they are mids. So as you can see here, I'm gonna block the first hit low and then stand up on the successive hits, and you see I blocked them all effectively. And if you look to the left of Vera there, you'll see that I am +8 where I used to be +6. So if I block this, which is a little bit easier to do now, I can get a very healthy punish on Beatrix for her trying to throw out that burst option. So now it's a little bit more risky for Beatrix to use that in neutral willy-nilly. And in a similar fashion, the ultimate version also got changed for its properties after the first hit. So you block the first one low, then the rest of them are mids. But the move is not all bad because they did give a buff to the medium version to where you can combo on counter hit because they gave it additional hit stun. I think you can only get far light from this range, but maybe in terms of close to the corner, you can get something a little bit more juicy. But it's something. And the ultimate version got better wall bounce, so the opponent does end up a little bit closer to you. I don't believe that you can get a combo unless you are close to the wall. So we're a little bit closer to the wall now. I'm gonna go for a sweep. There you go. And then one more gift that she got was that her command grab now gives her better Oki. In a video that I detailed about Beatrix where I was playing her to learn more about her, I mentioned that one of the weaknesses that she had, one of the things that she had after her command grab was that she didn't necessarily get the best Oki, so you didn't necessarily mind being +4 where she couldn't threaten anything immediately. But they made it so that the opponent is now closer to her on a successful hit so that she can threaten that 6XL a little bit better. And I believe she's at a far H range too. So that's at least good for her being able to keep up the snowball if she lands the command grab. That all being said, definitely a net nerf for everybody's favorite society agent in this patch. The heavy Star Chaser nerf to her combo potential and then her damage corner carry could be a big hit to her strength as a character. I think that she still does a really good job in the strike throw game, but she's not necessarily doing the most damage and taking you to the corner as soon as she does, or as soon as she used to, I should say. And then her riding free skill, being able to be more easily blocked and easily punishable, is going to be different for her in terms of how she approaches the neutral. All in all, I think that B is going to be a little bit weaker than she was in the patch prior. And then the final character to receive changes was Versusia, and yes, I believe that she did get some nerfs that many will agree were kind of needed. To start things off, her 5L here, a very tough button for a lot of people to play around, because in the past it would have the clash property of the medium buttons, and now she gets crush countered for it, which means that my medium now beats her light. So they reduced the priority of the move so that it will clash with lights but will lose to mediums and heavies. When Versusia has her buffs active, when she's all fiery and glowy like you see on the screen right here, her 5U lariat right here used to be +2, it's now -4 on block, so her ability to keep up pressure is not as strong. She used to be able to put you in a pretty strong block string that would give you some pretty nice corner carry while also retaining plus frames. And on hit, it launches the opponent into the air now instead of keeping them grounded. So similar to Beatrix's heavy Star Chaser, it definitely changes her ability to carry the opponent into the corner and the ability to cycle skills throughout the combo or a pressure string. There are still ways for Versusia to combo here on the newly launched opponent, but it's different from keeping them on the ground, where you could prevent combo limit from activating longer than you can now. And in the skill department, there was a redistribution of strength in terms of the versions of the skills that she would use. Her Deadly Flare, or her Neutral Special, or her 236X, the heavy version used to be anywhere tracking, and it was very fast. At anywhere on screen it would track the opponent, but now they shortened the tracking range so it only goes about that far. So while it's still instantaneous, it doesn't hit from the same ranges, so you got to be about say about 2/3 of the screen away from your opponent for it to start actually tracking them. In response to this, they did buff the tracking of the medium version, which is not as instantaneous as the heavy version, but will now reach full screen instead of stopping short, just short of that. So still has the ability to use Pillar to deter opponents sitting at a further out range trying to zone her, but I think it's not as oppressive as the threat of the heavy Pillar, which again came out instantaneously and then it was just boom and she would just get it started. So it was harder for a character like Eustace, for example, to charge Flamek at her when she could just be like boom, heavy Pillar, all right, game's over. In a similar vein, they nerfed the activity of heavy Anicha, or her down special, to 2x. It is not on the screen for nearly as long as it used to be. It does not linger there, so the space control is not as strong as it was before. It is still pretty good because it covers a significant range, but it's not out there for as long, so the character does not have to heed the warning of the round, circular, or spherical object in front of them. On the other hand, again, similar to Deadly Flare, they made it so the medium version lingers on screen a little bit more. So you saw that it starts out slower and then makes its way over to the opponent in a faster fashion. So the activity on that is buffed, so you still get the space control by using the medium version instead of the heavy version. So it's pretty interesting how they shuffled around how the versions of the skills worked, and I'm gonna be very interested to see how Versusia players will start to use the different versions in terms of how they use, or in terms of how they control space with the character. One final thing I'm gonna mention about her is that she previously posed a huge threat to anybody throwing out a fireball against her beyond just the Pillar, but when she had access to 100 meter, she could just have her SBA ready and waiting for anybody, and the way that it worked, it would always trigger a cinematic, so it was very, very threatening for anybody trying to play a fireball game against her if she had 100 meter. But now what they did was that it loses its projectile invulnerability after the startup of the move, so that she can't just go through fireballs and hit them with the SBA. And the same is said for her SSBA. And the same is said for her SSBA. So I have Zeta throwing out the fireball, I still get hit out of it. So that is going to be much appreciated again by characters who want to throw out fireballs at her without being disincentivized by it any time that she has that 100 meter. So Versusia is kind of weird because while I do think that she joins Beatrix in the characters that got net nerf department in this patch, I think that she got a little bit more of a rework because of how the medium skills were buffed while the heavy skills were brought down. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of game plan that Versusia players adopt now, and if it's as effective as it previously was. It'll be different for sure. A CEO is around the corner, so we'll see if anybody's going to play the character so we get an idea of what this new version of her is going to look like. But yeah, it's going to be weird not seeing her kind of coast to coasting with Celestial Dominion and then just kind of getting free plus frames on it as well. Different times for Dormammu over there. And with that, those are all the major changes with this new patch of Granblue Fantasy Versus Rising. If you feel that I missed something, or you have an idea as to how a change that I showed in the video is going to pan out in the patch, let me know in the comments below, because I'm definitely interested in seeing what everybody's cooking up with this patch. If you enjoyed the video or you found a little bit of value in it, please consider leaving a like or a subscribe. It definitely helps the channel a lot in terms of growing it, and I would definitely love to be able to make more videos for y'all in the future for GBVSR. Until then, enjoy the new patch, enjoy the new character. I can't wait to see y'all out in the skies. See y'all next time.